Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturns. For this week's project, I decided to make this pepper grinder from a Wood River pepper grinder kit. This is the antique copper finish kit. I actually have mixed feelings about it. The instructions are skimpy, but still say use drill a 1-inch hole and use a jam chuck. I used little plugs instead. These are 1 inch and then 1.25 inches on the outside. Did about the same thing, but enabled me to use it between centers instead of a jam chuck. The other thing it says is to use a 3-inch block of wood of any height. So, well, I thought about that and said, well, I would like to be able to grasp it comfortably with my one hand while I turn the crank with the other hand. So that's the extent of the revisions to the instructions. But in one sense, I'm a bit disappointed because I don't think whoever adapted this from the antique design ever have done it, because if you look at where these screws are that attach it to the base, they are directly under the base here, and almost impossible to get attached. It's really tough. They have to go in at an angle. So and then in modern days, this maybe is a pinch hazard. Don't let your kids use this pepper grinder. But it still does grind pepper, and it does look nice. I decided for my block of wood, it could have been solid, it could have been a laminated block, but I decided to use it with segmented rings. That makes little difference to the process, so I'm really not showing that. But still, okay, let's grind some pepper. So, here it is.
This wood is heat-treated ash and maple in 19 segmented rings of 8 segments each. It could also have been a solid block or a laminated block. There are very few and trivial differences in turning. Most start with mounting the wood to a lathe to drill a 1-inch hole completely through the block of wood. I build my segmented piece on threaded waste blocks, so mine is already mounted. Then, with the speed slow, drill as deeply as my freshly sharpened bit will allow. The kit instructions say to use a jam chuck. Similarly, using scrap, I turned 2 plugs with a 1-inch tenon on a 1.25-inch base. With these, I do not need a large jam chuck and can turn this between centers, mostly. Still, I need to rough turn my block and cut a tenon. I insert 1 plug now to stabilize the live center end while I do exactly that. I gently rough down the segmented rings. Until it is round, there is a risk of splintering when a gouge hits the end of a segment. However, once it is round, this is not much of a risk. Then cut a tenon for mounting to a chuck. With the wood mounted to the chuck, I can also use that original threaded waste block or faceplate to stabilize the live center end with a revolving threaded live center. Then part off the waste block. As I approach where it will separate, I loosen the live center to give it some slack. Then clean up the end. However, I must confess that I use my metal lathe to give an accurate face-off. Now I can drill from this end for the through hole for pepper to fall through. For a bit of planning, I want to position the grinder mechanism and trace its outline. I do not want to risk reducing the diameter to less than the mechanism base. Then back to the lathe, I mark off a slightly larger circle for the buffer zone. Now for the fun part, turning a simple shape. I planned the height to be comfortable for my hand to grasp the base while I crank with the other hand. I like a simple shape. A lot of beads and coves show off, but are not necessarily comfortable. By the way, I think this heat-treated ash is intended to be a less expensive substitute for walnut. It has a similar color and tone, slightly more grain. The most noticeable difference is the smell. Walnut can smell like a barnyard. Yuck. This ash smells like a smoky barbecue. The dust is also dark and barbecued. The smoky odor seems to persist. Despite the strong odor, I do prefer smoke to the barnyard smell. After shaping with a spindle gouge, I switched to a skew used as a scraper to refine the edge. There is a hardness difference between the ash and the maple that I have to be careful to smooth out. Off camera, I also cut the base slightly concave, but only to the plug. I will have to take care of the centerpiece under the plug later. For now, I sand through all the grits, wearing a dust respirator and a dust extractor running. Now to sand off that remaining center. I guess with a little more planning, I could have done this while still mounted to the chuck and before switching to the end plugs. Oh well, no big deal for a surface no one will ever look at. The grinder mechanism must be screwed down. However, it is designed without decent access to drive the screws. I'm using transfer punches to mark the hole position. Then drill pilot holes at an angle I hope allows me to set the screws properly. Later. Before assembly, I apply walnut oil. This really brings out the rich, dark, almost walnut color. This dark wood begs to be shiny. With buffing wheels, Tripoli, white diamond, and carnauba wax, the shine comes easily. Well, as a decorative piece, this pepper grinder is just fine. I doubt the designer has ever made one, or else the attachment would be different. The heat-treated ash as a walnut substitute will satisfy a casual observer, but not a woodworker. Still, the smaller drain on the pocketbook may satisfy a woodturner or a woodworker. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends about my videos. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I add a new woodturning video to my website. Always, please wear your full face shield anytime the lathe is running. It could save your life.